One of the things that became very apparent to me, someone who had spent the past couple of years playing a ton of JRPGs and getting into stuff like Ys and Trails and a number of other franchises like Tales, classic Dragon Quest, Shin Megami Tensei, Persona. I've been playing a lot of like relatively modern JRPGs over the past decade. In a lot of ways, the genre's in a way better place than it was in the 2000s. In the 2000s, you look at stuff like Tales of Xillia and Final Fantasy 13, and you see like a genre that was on the decline because it wasn't the biggest thing in gaming anymore. They weren't like the most involved, engaging stories. Like the talent had left, and we were kind of in this decline period. And what hasn't really been understood by the community is that we've had a resurgence of popularity in the genre sometime after that. Of course, like Nintendo produced Xenoblade Chronicles, Fire Emblem blew up. We've gotten like all these like big JRPG franchises. Ys and Trails are bigger than they've ever have been. I know Tales has been selling a lot more. Dragon Quest is more mainstream outside of Japan. Games like the Team Asano games from Square Enix. Like there are all these like JRPGs that are doing really really well now. After that industry-wide slump. And yet we still see a lot of people who kind of refuse to admit that like the genre has bounced back and is now like quite a bit better than it was in the 90s in a lot of ways. Obviously, like we're not getting like all-time classics anytime soon, but at the same time, like they're actually quite innovative and they actually feel like they're going back to more what people actually liked. Like we've kind of moved past like the edge period and like the try hard period and actually started making things that like people actually want to play. That's been something that's been very apparent for a long time. But what's really interesting is like how a handful of people have really gone all in pushing this meme that Expedition 33 is bigger and better than any modern JRPG. And instantly, any actual JRPG fan, myself included, were really quick to clock these people as like non-fans. And the more that, say, Sebbywebz runs his mouth about how Expedition 33 is better than like Final Fantasy 7 or like Persona, like it just kind of exposes him more and more as someone who doesn't really know all that much about the genre. Because I wouldn't say Final Fantasy VII is a particularly great RPG in this day and age, especially not the remakes. I wouldn't say Persona was ever a good RPG by any stretch of the imagination. Like there are just so many better options out there that I don't even understand how these series became like popular to begin with. But when it comes to like Sebbywebz, when it comes to these plebs, when it comes to people who are literally being paid to promote Expedition 33, like all of a sudden that like, oh yes, the Frenchies, they made something that was that has far surpassed like any JRPG series since the 90s, and it's just like, what are you talking about? Like, what JRPGs have you played in the past 30 years? And the answer inevitably just comes down to like not a whole lot, because if these guys are comparing this to like Final Fantasy VI and saying the genre hasn't evolved or improved since then, like they're just straight up delusional. Okay, I love Final Fantasy VI, it's an all-time classic, but to say it isn't dated is just completely wrong. Okay, and that's something that people like this don't understand, is that a game can be an all-time classic in its genre and stand the test of time while still being outdone by its sequels in other aspects, right? Ocarina of Time is obviously a way more iconic, popular game than Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword. But at the same time, those games innovated and did a lot more for the series and for the action-adventure genre as a whole. I don't mean to imply Zelda is an RPG. It's not, but like that was just the example I came up with. Like, it's the same with, like, JRPGs, where, Final Fantasy VI is a great game, it is a classic, it is something that people still enjoy today, but at the same time, there are so many other modern RPGs that do so much more than it when it comes to, like, the voice acting and the characterization and just, like, having more fleshed out, like, worlds to explore and combat systems, right? Like, to me, it just feels like the industry just doesn't want to, like, acknowledge the value of like the average JRPG, where they explicitly want to declare Expedition 33 to be the best JRPG in years, even though it's not a JRPG, even though it's not really anything remarkable or special. I would argue it's not even worth playing. And I think it's very apparent by looking at the people who glazed this game that like they don't seem to play this game either. You know, whenever you see someone like Sebbywebz or FPS Kyle like rant and rave about this game, like it comes off as just completely fake because you know this is not the kind of game they would normally play. They try and compare this to other RPGs and fail because they're not familiar with the genre, its conventions, what the community thinks, and just ends up like with these weird blanket statements like the best RPG since Final Fantasy VI. Well, okay, but what about RPGs being made today? You know, like again, like you just look at what these people tried to do. You look at their backgrounds. You look at like, you know, their play histories. You look at like the games they enjoy and they talk about, and like you just get this impression that is valid. That you know is valid. That they aren't really fans. That they don't really know what they're talking about. That they're just grifters. That they're just posers. And like we're seeing more and more like with situations like this that more and more people who are actually in the JRPG community, who actually play games like Trails, who actually know, you know, what the actual peak of the genre is, like, you know, these people are coming out and like, you know, condemning them, you know, and like saying they don't know what they're talking about. And, you know, I'm not a huge RPG aficionado. I've played more of them in the past like couple of years than I think I ever have in my life. And I really like them a lot, and I'm getting more into it. Like, even I am just kind of like, I don't trust Expedition 33. I don't trust the fans. These guys clearly don't know anything about the genre. Like, at all. They don't even try to engage with it. And that's why they have such this weird, blatant disregard for the entire genre as a whole. Like, again, they don't love Expedition 33 because it's just a refinement of the concepts and, like, you know, genuinely improves them and tells an engaging story. Like, they're saying Expedition 33 is better because they hate JRPGs as a concept. And I do think that's, like, the important distinction to make when talking about this game and why I don't respect it or its fans. You know, and you can see this in, like, Sebbywebz posts all the time, where he just says that, like, you know, none of these games are worth anything, that nobody likes them, and that they're just, like, a blight on video games. And it's just, like, he's just a grifter who doesn't know what he's talking about. And he's not the only one, but I don't understand why we are supposed to listen to these chuckleheads.